The landscape of the modern monarchy is often shaped not by the grand, sweeping gestures of statecraft, but by the subtle, calculated whispers that echo through the corridors of media and public perception. To truly understand the current state of royal affairs, one must look beyond the official press releases and delve into the intricate dance of optics, strategy, and survival that plays out on a global stage. The narrative surrounding the British royal family has always been a compelling tapestry of tradition and personal drama, but in recent years it has transformed into something far more complex and transactional. It is a world where every movement is scrutinized, every silence is parsed for meaning, and every choice of travel destination becomes a matter of international debate. As we look at the events unfolding this week, it becomes increasingly clear that we are witnessing a carefully choreographed performance, a theatrical production designed to project power, relevance, and a sense of enduring connection to an institution that remains one of the most recognized on Earth. To fully appreciate the nuance of this unfolding story, it is essential to look back at how these public personas were constructed and how the tension between personal autonomy and institutional expectation has reached a breaking point. For those who follow these developments closely, the layers of strategy become fascinatingly visible, revealing a high-stakes game where reputation is the ultimate currency. If you want to stay ahead of these breaking updates and dive deeper into the hidden mechanics of the royal world, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an analysis. The concept of proximity to the crown has always carried an immense weight, serving as both a shield and a powerful instrument for those who find themselves within its orbit. For individuals who have stepped away from the traditional constraints of institutional duty, maintaining a visible link to that central source of authority becomes a matter of existential importance. It is not merely about family ties or historical legacy, it is about the tangible and intangible benefits that come from being perceived as a part of that ancient lineage. When that connection is threatened, or when public interest begins to wane, the need to re-establish that presence becomes urgent. This dynamic explains the elaborate maneuvers we see today, where the question of whether or not to cross the ocean becomes a multi-day saga filled with conflicting reports, sudden reversals, and heightened emotional stakes. The public is presented with a narrative of hesitation and danger, a story of an individual torn between the desire for reconciliation and the pressing concerns of personal safety. Yet, beneath the surface of these dramatic pronouncements lies a far more pragmatic reality, one rooted in the absolute necessity of maintaining a recognizable identity in a crowded and competitive global marketplace. The shifting explanations for these travel arrangements, alternating between absolute impossibility and sudden confirmation, suggest a deliberate attempt to maximize attention and control the flow of information. It's a pattern that has become deeply familiar to observers of this contemporary saga, where the process of planning a journey is transformed into a vehicle for generating headlines and maintaining a continuous presence in the public consciousness. To understand the full scope of this strategy, one must examine the specific context of the upcoming gatherings that serve as the ostensible reason for this visit. These events, designed to honor resilience and international community, provide an ideal backdrop for a public return, offering a stage that is both prestigious and emotionally resonant. However, the true focus of attention has shifted away from the events themselves and onto the interpersonal dynamics that will play out in their shadow. The decision to selectively participate in certain engagements while avoiding others speaks to a carefully managed approach to public exposure. It reflects an awareness of how individual reputations can impact one another, and the desire to avoid any association that might diminish a carefully curated image. When an individual's public standing has suffered a significant setback, those closest to them must make difficult choices about how to position themselves. In the world of high-profile image management, being photographed next to someone who has recently experienced a major public defeat is often viewed as a significant risk, leading to a visible distancing that speaks volumes to those who know how to read the signs. This subtle decoupling, where one partner steps forward into the spotlight while the other remains in the background, is a testament to the calculating nature of modern public life, where even the most personal relationships are subject to the cold logic of brand protection as the week progresses. The focus inevitably turns toward the older generation, specifically toward the individual who now holds the ultimate authority within the institution. The pressure on the leadership to navigate these complex family dynamics while upholding the dignity and neutrality of their position is immense. There is a profound tension between the natural inclinations of a parent or grandparent and the strict requirements of a public office that demands a focus on continuity and stability above all else. The choices made in the coming days will have lasting implications, not just for the immediate family, but for the public's perception of the institution's resilience. For a leadership that has spent decades preparing for its current responsibilities, every interaction with those who have chosen a different path must be weighed with extreme caution. The risk of allowing personal sentiment to override institutional interests is a constant concern, particularly when past experiences have demonstrated that private moments can easily be converted into public commodities. The ongoing discussions about potential meetings, private audiences, and brief encounters underscore the delicate nature of this balancing act, where a single gesture can be interpreted in multiple ways, either as a sign of weakness or as an act of profound magnanimity. The anticipation surrounding these potential interactions creates a unique atmosphere of suspense, keeping the global audience engaged and ensuring that the narrative remains centered on the enduring power and drama of the family dynamic. The unfolding scenario shifts from the abstract strategies of public relations into the tangible reality of legal battles and sudden disclosures that have fundamentally disrupted the established narrative. At the center of this escalating tension is a profound contradiction between the public declarations of an unyielding stance against media intrusion and the behind-the-scenes realities of information management. For years, the narrative presented to the world was one of absolute victimhood, a story of individuals relentlessly pursued by an aggressive press, while maintaining a stance of complete detachment from the machinery of media briefings. This week, however, that carefully constructed facade suffered a devastating blow in the public arena, not through speculation, but through the rigorous documentation presented in a court of law. The reality of high-stakes litigation is that it demands absolute transparency, a requirement that often proves catastrophic for those whose public appeal relies on a carefully managed version of events. When individual claims are subjected to the strict scrutiny of legal cross-examination, the gap between public rhetoric and private action is frequently exposed, leading to a profound reassessment of credibility. The dismissal of a massive slate of legal claims does not merely represent a tactical defeat in a courtroom. It serves as a powerful public refutation of a foundational argument, signaling to the wider world that the reality of these relationships is far more complex and transactional than previously admitted. This legal unraveling has brought to light specific interactions that challenge the core assertion of absolute distance from media professionals. The revelation that internal communications were used to strategically distribute information while publicly denying any such involvement represents a severe breach of the unwritten rules that govern public life. In the intricate ecosystem of public commentary, trust is an essential commodity, and once it is demonstrated that private assurances are inconsistent with public stances, the institutional support that previously existed begins to erode rapidly. This erosion is particularly evident in the way legacy media institutions have responded to these developments, shifting from a position of cautious reporting to one of direct confrontation. The disclosure of long-hidden communications has forced a re-examination of past events, revealing a pattern of behavior that many observers find deeply unsettling. It is a pattern characterized by an apparent willingness to utilize the tools of public exposure when it serves an immediate tactical advantage, combined with a fierce denunciation of those same tools when they are turned against personal interests. This dual approach to public communication has created a profound sense of disillusionment among those who previously sought to maintain an objective view of these ongoing disputes, highlighting the deep-seated contradictions that lie at the heart of the current controversy as the narrative deepens. The focus shifts to a remarkable and highly personal account that has emerged from the periphery of these legal proceedings, providing an unprecedented look into the private conduct that has long remained hidden from view. This account, delivered by an individual who found herself unexpectedly dragged into the public spotlight as a consequence of this relentless litigation, offers a stark contrast to the idealized image often projected by those who claim to seek a quieter life. The details that have emerged paint a vivid picture of social interactions from over a decade ago, revealing an atmosphere of immense privilege combined with a troubling disregard for the boundaries and dignity of others. The description of an initial meeting, marked by an unusual and assertive gesture involving a physical object under the guise of establishing trust, speaks volumes about the underlying dynamics of power and entitlement that can exist within these elite circles. Such behavior, characterized by an expectation of compliance and an assumption of secrecy, reflects a broader mindset that views other individuals not as independent peers, but as participants in a personal drama, where the rules are dictated by those of higher status. The decision to retain these private memories for 15 years without utilizing them for personal or financial gain underscores the fundamental decency and professional integrity of the observer, while simultaneously emphasizing the sheer folly of the legal strategy that forced these details into the open. The contrast between individual discretion and institutional aggression has become one of the most compelling aspects of this ongoing saga. For a decade and a half, highly sensitive information and private anecdotes were carefully guarded, preserved out of a sense of respect for personal relationships and the appropriate context of social life. This protective silence extended even to moments of significant historical interest, where major personal milestones were shared in private confidence long before they became public knowledge. Yet, instead of recognizing and appreciating this long-standing discretion, the chosen legal strategy was to launch a direct assault on the credibility and character of the individual who had maintained it, labeling her with derogatory terms and accusing her of elaborate fabrications. This aggressive approach, seemingly driven by a profound sense of paranoia and a desire to control every aspect of the public record, has backfired spectacularly. By forcing a defensive disclosure of documented evidence, the litigation has succeeded only in validating the very accounts it sought to suppress, creating a permanent and highly damaging record of personal conduct that would have otherwise remained confined to private. The resulting public discourse has focused heavily on this extraordinary miscalculation, highlighting how an attempt to vindicate a personal reputation through aggressive legal action can ultimately lead to its comprehensive destruction in the court of public opinion. The broader implications of these disclosures extend far beyond the immediate individuals involved. touching upon the fundamental nature of accountability and the shifting perceptions of authority in contemporary society. When the details of these private interactions are laid bare, they reveal a striking similarity to past institutional scandals that have plagued the establishment for generations, characterized by a specific combination of boorish behavior and an assumption of immunity from public scrutiny. The public is left to contemplate a pattern of behavior that seems entirely out of touch with modern standards of conduct, reinforcing the perception of a profound disconnect between the lived experiences of ordinary citizens and the actions of those born into positions of immense wealth and influence. This disconnect is amplified by the revelation of alternative lifestyles and personal choices that were hidden from public view under the cover of official service, suggesting that the public persona was frequently at odds with private reality. As these details continue to emerge and dominate the public consciousness, the challenge of maintaining a cohesive and respected public image becomes increasingly insurmountable. The ongoing discussion surrounding these events is no longer confined to the standard channels of commentary. It has become a broader conversation about the nature of privilege, the responsibilities of public figures, and the inevitable consequences of allowing personal vanity to dictate legal and strategic decisions on a global stage. The culmination of this multi-layered saga brings us to the core of why these events resonate so deeply across the global stage, revealing the permanent shifts in institutional power, the biographical context of the key figures, and the commercial motivations that drive modern public life. To truly understand the gravity of this moment, one must look at the central paradox of the modern establishment, where an ancient lineage finds itself continuously locked in a struggle with its own offshoots over the ultimate control of its historical narrative. This conflict is not merely an interpersonal disagreement. It is a high-stakes battle over cultural capital, where the symbols of statehood and heritage are treated as commodities to be packaged, distributed, and monetized for a global audience. The upcoming milestone anniversaries of past national tragedies provide a highly charged emotional backdrop for this ongoing commercial enterprise, offering a unique opportunity to blend personal grief with public entertainment. The preparation of major documentary projects for international streaming platforms illustrates how private memories are systematically transformed into commercial assets, ensuring that the legacy of past generations remains an active, revenue-generating component of a modern media empire. This integration of family history and corporate strategy represents a fundamental departure from the traditional role of public service, replacing the ideal of quiet devotion with the realities of content creation and digital engagement. The individuals driving this strategy possess complex biographies that have been shaped by a lifetime of extraordinary privilege combined with deep-seated personal grievances. Born into the apex of institutional authority, they were raised under the intense scrutiny of the global press, a circumstance that inevitably left a profound mark on their development and worldview. The early years of service, characterized by military deployment and public appearances, created a public image of relatable dedication and youthful charm. However, beneath this accessible facade lay a growing resentment toward the structural constraints of their position, a feeling of being permanently overshadowed by the rigid hierarchy of succession and the demands of institutional conformity. This tension ultimately led to a dramatic break from traditional duties, a decision that was framed as a quest for personal freedom and financial independence. Yet, the reality of life outside the institutional embrace has proven to be a continuous struggle to maintain relevance without the built-in support of the crown. The transition from public servant to global celebrity required a complete reinvention of purpose, one that relied heavily on exposing the inner workings of the very family they had left behind. This reliance on institutional grievance as a primary source of content has created an unsustainable dynamic, where each subsequent project must offer increasingly provocative disclosures to maintain the interest of commercial partners and the public alike. The consequence of this reliance on public disclosure is a profound and perhaps irreversible damage to the foundational relationships that connect these individuals to their homeland. The ultimate success of any endeavor aimed at establishing a permanent presence in the United Kingdom depends entirely on the blessing and formal recognition of the reigning monarch. The leadership of the institution, having spent a lifetime navigating the delicate balance between personal affection and constitutional duty, faces an agonizing dilemma when dealing with these continuous public provocations. The pressure to maintain a dignified silence in the face of aggressive media campaigns is immense, rooted in a deep understanding that the survival of the institution depends on its perceived stability and neutrality. To grant a formal audience or a visible sign of reconciliation under the current circumstances is viewed by many seasoned observers as a significant strategic error, an act that risks validating a pattern of behavior that relies on emotional leverage and public pressure to achieve personal goals. The long-term stability of a 1,000-year-old institution cannot be safely sacrificed to appease the immediate demands of personal sentimentality, particularly when past experiences have demonstrated that any private concession will likely be utilized to advance a separate commercial agenda. As the immediate drama of the courtroom and the travel schedules begins to recede from the daily news cycle, the enduring impact of these events on the wider public consciousness becomes increasingly clear. For the broader audience, whose engagement with these matters is often casual and filtered through social media networks, the overarching narrative has shifted from one of romantic rebellion to one of profound self-sabotage. The public has witnessed an extraordinary spectacle where individuals possessing immense resources and global platforms have repeatedly chosen to engage in protracted conflicts that diminish their own standing and credibility. The systematic alienation of long-standing professional allies, the aggressive pursuit of failed legal strategies, and the visible decoupling of personal partnerships in the face of public adversity have combined to create an image of instability and miscalculation. This shift in public perception is particularly damaging for a brand that was built on the ideals of modern empowerment and progressive change, revealing instead a pattern of conduct that is deeply rooted in the very entitlement and privilege it claims to reject. The lesson of this contemporary saga is that true influence cannot be sustained solely through the strategic manipulation of media cycles or the continuous recycling of personal grievances. It requires a foundational commitment to integrity, consistency, and a respect for the boundaries of others. Ultimately, the events of this tumultuous week serve as a definitive turning point in the ongoing relationship between the modern monarchy and its departed members. The illusions of an easy reconciliation or a successful dual existence, where individuals could enjoy the commercial benefits of royal status without its corresponding duties, have been thoroughly dismantled by the cold reality of public exposure and legal defeat. The institution itself continues to move forward, anchored by its ancient traditions and its commitment to public service, while those who chose a different path are left to navigate an increasingly complex and unforgiving media landscape of their own making. The narrative that began with grand promises